Hello crafters and welcome back to the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel. My name is Deepa from Designs by Dee, and today I'm going to be sharing these two gorgeous cards made using Yana's Daisies collection from Spellbinders. Now the products in this collection are amazing. I will note that I haven't used the stencils here, but the option is there to get those in the store. Everything that I use today will be linked in the description below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you do like the video and want to see future videos. So let's go ahead and take a look at these products. So the first one I'm going to be using is this large floral plate called Daisy Shower. It has a bunch of daisies in the background. I've also got the actual cutting dies for Yana's daisies, and then these Crafty Hug sentiments, which are another set of letterpress plates with the coordinating dies. So first thing I want to do is grab that large plate and do some letterpress techniques. So all I'm really doing is just adding ink to this and pressing a few different backgrounds, and then I'll choose which ones I want to use. You'll notice that I'm using a larger than needed piece of cardstock. So this is just half of an 8.5 by 11 piece of white cardstock. And you'll notice this plate is gigantic. So you can make an A2 size card, you can make an A7 size card. Choose what size you like. I like to actually press out the entire image, and then I can choose what portion of it I'd like to use. In the cards you'll see at the end of this video, I actually use a portion of what I've done here to add a little bit of something to the inside of the card. So I started off with some iced spruce distress oxide ink, and now I'm grabbing some weathered wood, and I'm just kind of adding it around the daisies just to lighten the edges a little bit and then keep the background darker. So I've gone ahead and pressed this through my die cutting machine, and you don't really see too much of the variation of color, but I did like adding it on there with the brush because I feel like it smoothed out the ink a little bit more. Let's go ahead and make a second background, and this time I'm using the iced spruce, and then I'm going to use some Uncharted Mariner to add a little bit of blue around the daisies this time. So you'll notice I'm just using a regular blending brush to add the Uncharted Mariner around the edges, so it has a bit of a bluey tinge to it. I'll go ahead and put it through my die cutting machine, and you can see the result is a little different. And I think I kind of like that blue tinge in the background there. Now on that piece of cardstock, I was just showing you a little bit of seepage that occurred between my plate and the actual platform. And that is just because when I cleaned the plate, some of the water or the solution got in between the plate and the platform. And then when I put it through my die cutting machine, it came out on my cardstock. So that's an important tip. Make sure you clean under the plate so you don't ruin your prints. Now for my next one, I'm going to use some chipped sapphire, and I'm just going to put this generously all over the plate. Now it looks like my my ink pad is a little dried up. I should probably add more ink to it. So I will have like some faded areas, which is okay. That's kind of the look I'm going for. If you want it to be solid, make sure your ink pad's nice and juicy. Then I'm grabbing some Stormy Sky, and I'm just adding some of this around the edges of the daisies to kind of lighten it up a little so that the background is deeper. You get kind of like a variation of color, which is what I'm going for here. So now we can go ahead and look at the final results, and look how fun that is. Okay, so I'm grabbing two of the backgrounds and I'm going to color them in. I'm using RV52 and R20, and I'm just doing some simple coloring, nothing too extreme with my Copics here. Keep in mind we used Oxide ink, so those are water-based. Copics are alcohol-based, so this should color in nicely. And as I said, there are stencils that are available in the shop that you could get to go with these. They actually, I didn't realize when I grabbed these that the stencils really work well with the plate. They're amazing. So I do recommend getting them if you're going to get the plate, but I didn't get them, so I'm just doing my coloring. So I'm using some pinks here on the gray. I decided to just use the plain gray rather than that gray with the blue tinge. So I'm going to go ahead and color that all in. I'll show you the result in a minute. The second panel I'm using is the one with the chipped sapphire. Now this one I'm going to color the daisies in with some grays. So I'm using C1, C3, and C5, and I'm just going to build up the color, keeping the darkest color closer to the center of the flower, and this kind of creates like a lot of depth. You can see as I'm adding the darkest color how much depth that creates at the center there. It's really nice, and as I mentioned, the stencils do all of this for you. So really, I mean, I really regret not getting the stencil. So if you're going to get the plates, get the stencils. So yeah, I'm going to just go ahead and color in the rest of this background, and I'm just going to fast forward through this because it's a lot of coloring. These are the two final backgrounds, and you can see how gorgeous they look. As I mentioned, when you darken that area around the center of the flower, it really helps it stand out a little more. So for the actual die, I am going to be using some gray pearl cardstock here, and I'm going to cut out the main die without the outline from this cardstock. I'm going to take all the little bits out of it, and then I'm going to do some die cut inlay here. So once I get all of these bits out, I'll set this aside, and then I will cut the same thing out. Actually, first of all, I'm cutting out the outline from white cardstock, and then I will go back with that first die and cut out of white cardstock. So I did this off camera, and I'm pulling this out carefully. I don't want any of those bits to come out of the die. Now I'm grabbing some press and seal, and what I'm going to do is attach the press and seal to the back of the die, or to basically hold together all of those paper pieces. I'm going to push down really hard and make sure I've grabbed them all, and then release the die from the paper pieces. As you can see, a poking tool comes in handy here. There are a ton of little holes to kind of poke out all of those little bits, and then you can see it comes off really nicely. This keeps all of those pieces together in one, and now I can just kind of color. So I don't have to worry about coloring over that outline because we're not going to end up using it in the end. I'm just basically keeping everything together to allow me to inlay this in a faster way. So it just makes the process a little more efficient. I'm using the same colors I used on the background panel, RV52 and R20, and I'm coloring it in the exact same way for the flowers. And then for the center of the flowers, I'm going to use some grays. So I'm grabbing the C1, C3, and the C5 again, and I'm just going to quickly add some color to it and add a little bit of depth. Now, the colors on this die cut are pretty light. They're pretty soft, and I'm keeping that soft feel of this card going by doing this. Now, after we're done coloring, it's just a matter of doing the die cut inlay. So let's go ahead and get to that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our outline that we cut earlier, and we're going to inlay everything. But sorry, before we do, I actually went ahead. So I started off with the R20 and I added the RV52, and then I came back with the R20 again and kind of just blended everything out. So you can see here, that's how the gray is going to look over the top. If you feel that it's a bit too light, you want to use something a little darker, I'd grab a darker pink and maybe use that in the center, closer towards where the center of the flower is, to darken that up a little bit and create a little more drama, I guess you could say. So I'm starting off by adding adhesive, some liquid glue to the back of that gray outline that we cut out onto that white backing there. And now I can kind of detach this carefully from the press and seal. And I'm just going to grab my glue and add it into all of the compartments of these daisies here, all of the little die cut areas. You could do one flower at a time. I just decided to add the glue everywhere because it does take a little bit of time for this glue to get tacky. So if I need to, I can always just add more. Now I just kind of place it over top, and you should really, in theory, just be able to kind of push through each of those little die cut pieces. I did kind of have to go between the technique I'm doing here, where I'm pulling out each piece and putting it in, and then the technique which I started with, which I'll show you in a second, which worked out a little better the second time I tried to do it, right here, where I could just kind of poke each petal out, and then it just kind of stuck, and then it was just a matter of aligning it within the inlay. So, you know, choose whatever method works best for you, but I find that the press and seal, keeping everything together, just really helps me with the coloring, and it helps me quickly place the petals in because I know where each one goes, rather than everything just being like a bunch of die cuts and then trying to put a puzzle together, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut out some of the elements for my cards. The first thing I'm doing is I'm grabbing the smaller die in the Dotted Fancy Frames set from Pinkfresh Studio. I'm going to cut that out of that same gray pearly cardstock. Now I'm going to grab 2 sentiments from the Crafty Hug Sentiment set. I think I've got Sending Love and Hugs and Happy Birthday. Those are pretty generic. I like using the generic ones unless I'm making it for something in particular. And then I'm going to grab some foil. Now I think this one is gunmetal foil. It's really nice. I like silver, but I like this because it makes the color of the font kind of show up a little more. It's not as light. It's a little darker, so it looks really nice. I've gone ahead and I've foiled that on my Glimmer machine. So I've done kind of all of the glimmering and the die cutting off camera because my die cutting machine is pretty big. So I've gone ahead, heated up my Glimmer machine, added that piece, let it heat up for the time, put it through my die cutting machine, and you can see it foiled perfectly. I'm grabbing the coordinating dies now and I'm lining them up, and then I'll go ahead and put this through my die cutting machine to cut out both of these. Now I always love this part because it comes out so nice. It looks so professional in the end, and I love the scripty font on these sentiments. What do you guys think? I think it's so pretty. Now let's go ahead and start putting together card number 1. I'm grabbing that background and I'm cutting it down to size. Now remember, this is pretty large, so I'm actually cutting it down to a little smaller than A2 size so that I get a little bit of a border. So I think it's 4 inches by 5 1/4. And then I'm grabbing some vellum and I'm going to cut this down just a little smaller than that. So I think it's about 3 3/4 by 5. So that I get like a nice border around the edge there. What I wanted to do is mute the background a little bit. Keep in mind the colors I use on the background and on the daisies is the same. So I wanted to mute the background so those florals stand out just a little bit more, the die cut florals. You can see the difference there. So I showed you it with the vellum and without. It's a subtle difference, but it makes a huge difference in that die cut standing out. I don't want it to get lost in the background. So I'm grabbing an A2 size white piece of cardstock, and you'll notice the panel is, the size is different. It's actually 4 inches. It's 4 inches by 5 1/2. So you see I only have like a bit of white on either the left and right side there. So I actually kept the panel the full length. From top to bottom. Now I'm just deciding where I want these daisies to go. I was going to put them in the center, but I realized that they look a little nicer off to the bottom left. So I'm grabbing some foam squares, and I love the set of foam squares because you get those 2 sizes there. So if I want to use sizes, the smaller size, I can do that, the bigger size. And I love the width that the foam has. It sits up nicely. It gives it just the right amount of lift off that card. So I'll go ahead and attach this. You'll notice when I put the vellum on, I put it in a position where this die cut would cover the glue so that you wouldn't see it. And now I'm just adding the sentiment in the exact same manner with the smaller foam squares. And that's how simple that one is to put together. Now to just jazz this up a little, I'm going to add some metallic silver pearls from Pinkfresh Studio. As I've mentioned before, probably a couple times already, everything I'm using is linked in the description below. So if there's anything you like, you want to grab, you can go ahead, click on the links below and grab them in the ScrapbookPal store. The silver pearl just looks really nice on here. It kind of brings out the gray from the die cut and then also from the background. So I thought it just coupled really well with this. So I'm just using my Pinkfresh my bling tool here to kind of attach everything, my embellishment tool. And once I'm done finicking around with these pearls, this card is going to look amazing. Now, I was kind of contemplating using 2 colors. You'll notice that I've grabbed the pink glitter gems here, And I'm going to add a few of those as well. So that also brings out the shine of the pink as well. I started doing this lately. Before I used to use just one color of embellishment, but now I've kind of been coupling the different types, and I find that they give such a nice look. So I'll go ahead and finish that up here and move on to card number 2 with the chipped sapphire. So for this card, again, we're going to cut the panel down. I'm not going to use any vellum on this one because the background is going to steal the show. Okay, this plate is going to be the main focus of this card. I'm showing you here that if you're like me and you're like, oh my God, I'm cutting off so much of this, I don't want to waste it, you could possibly use it for another project, or I'm going to actually take these strips and use them on the inside of the card. So I'll show you that in a second. I've gone ahead and I've cut up this background to 5 1/4 by 4 inches so that I get a nice border around the edge. I'm going to adhere it to an A2 sized white side folding card base. Remember, we cut out that dotted fancy frames frame from that gray pearl cardstock. I'm going to use that as like a sentiment plaque. And I'm going to stick that on there in the top center. And then I'm going to take my sentiment and I'm just going to add this with some foam adhesive to kind of keep this one a little simple and keep your eyes focused on that gorgeous background plate. Now for this one, I'm just going to be using some silver. And okay, I can't even remember if I went ahead and I added more. Sorry, this is not the silver. This is the iridescent. These are the ice gems. So, okay, I'm sorry if I'm not saying it properly, but as I said, they're all listed down below. Let me get the right name for you right now. So these ones are the ice, the Clear Drops Ice from Pinkfresh Studio. So they're just clear white and they have a nice bubble look to them, which is very pretty. So I just thought that it would give it a nice simple look that would go really well with the card and not take away too much from the background. Now, as I mentioned, I have these strips. So I've got 2 of the strips, which I've cut down a little bit. I'm going to add some adhesive, and then I'm just going to add these to the inside of the card. And by doing this, I've really made my outside match my inside, which is something I love to do. And I haven't wasted all of those scraps that I cut off. Now I still have some, I can keep them for something else, but at least I've used the majority of that panel that I cut and, sorry, that I printed out, I letterpressed and I colored in and spent all my time on, right? So this is a great idea for using up scraps on the cards you're already using. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's video and have been inspired to create something similar yourself. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.